Up next on Ethno Forum is hip-hop and R&B musician Makadi. Originally from Boston, Makadi has been stationed in Vancouver the past few years, working the local music scene and building his career. Today we talk about Vancouver's music scene as a whole, what it's like to build a career as a musician in today's age, and the many aspects of creating socially aware music. You can catch more Makadi in A Toast to Art. It's our very own ethno-produced online short doc. Link is in the description. Enjoy.
What's good, everybody? My name is Makadi from Boston, Massachusetts. R&B singer-songwriter, moved to Vancouver 2 years ago. Been in the industry for a while. I've been writing music for 11 years or so. I've been singing for about 15 years. I've been a solo artist for about 3-4 years. So
you were born and raised Boston.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I know we've talked a lot before, and maybe we can just kind of go through the Boston days. I know you kind of got was it gospel singing, right, at church? Gospel
yeah,
singing?
Absolutely. So gospel music, church music it's really at the root of what I do and how I sing and what drives me as a musician, from like a spiritual and belief perspective. And my singing style itself is very obviously reminiscent of gospel and in church and things like that, with the riffs and runs sang in church.
You can still relax, but I'm just saying you can pull towards bed.
Yeah, let me.
So you sang in church.
Yeah, so I sang in church. I sang in gospel choir. Sang in a few different gospel choirs, some affiliated with schools. I always been religious, always had a relationship with God, and always had music in my life. So kind of naturally the two things kind of were always together for me, and once I knew that I wanted to take music seriously, I was just inspired by so many different kinds of music, like definitely gospel, but so many others. So it was kind of an interesting journey, kind of like seeing where that was going to take me, and like how I would define myself an artist, or like what kind of music I would find myself writing and vibing to the most. So I'm not a gospel artist by any means, but definitely get some undertones and from a vocal style perspective. In terms of like the meaning of music and like how I convey my artistry and just like the physical and metaphysical experience of singing is like all rooted in church for me.
Do you find that that's uncommon amongst your peers, perhaps, in this day and age, especially in hip hop and R&B? Maybe not R&B, but let's just say hip hop.
Yeah, I mean, I think like from an R&B perspective, R&B is definitely like it stems from gospel, right? It's an extension. Like gospel came before R&B, and the spirituals turned into gospel, and gospel made way to like R&B and things like that. So I think like any particularly black R&B artists, you're gonna a lot of times see that they come from a church background, or like regardless, that genre is an extension of gospel. From a hip hop perspective, I think nowadays it's becoming more acceptable for artists to bring in like church, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of bringing like bridging like secular and church in music. So like that's why you see a lot of like the Chance the Rappers now and other artists who are following his lead, because it's now a thing where people are like, oh, okay, like I can do this. All right, dope. Let's like bring in my church life into my music, which is pretty dope. But from a writing perspective, I think it's still pretty new for a lot of artists. Yeah. So it's kind of dope because it can manifest in so many different ways.
When you see that kind of make its way into hip hop and stuff like that, do you find it genuine most times? Because I feel like people will talk about God or can talk about the relationship with God, and it's more just kind of a blanket statement or a buzzword, right? And I think for you, it's deeply rooted in your foundation and in your faith, right?
For sure,
right?
100%. I think a lot of artists are gonna hop on a wave, as always, right? Like if something's popping, if Chance Rappers pop in, or whoever else is doing that is popping, and then there's like, okay, like this works. Like I feel like we were operating in a music industry that's driven by trends and is driven by things that are popular at a certain time, and that might not even be based on what people want, right? It's based on the industry and like what's selling, but what's selling a lot of times is like prescribed, you know? So a lot of times people, like, their artistry is very surface level, and it's really just about like, how can I get rich quick? How can I get famous quick? So, you know, if someone who's bringing gospel, like a Sam Henshaw, for example, other people will be like, okay, well, that's working. Well, I'm going to try that too, even though it's not authentic to who they are. If a lot of times they don't even know who they are as an artist. So I feel like that'll happen a lot of times where people are ingenuine from that perspective. But for the most part, I think that, like, at least for like the artists I know, like contemporary, like R&B, hip hop, fusion, whatever, that like bring in elements of gospel, it's coming from a real place. I feel like for that kind of music, or for something with like those kind of like raw elements, if you were going to fake it, like it'd be so obvious, and no one would really fuck with you, you know?
Yeah.
So, but like it's definitely out there, right? But I think it's nice that it's like that gospel is gaining more traction within other genres, because it's coming from a real place. And I think a lot of music generally right now is very superficial, and it's about money, it's about numbers. And I think that the world of indie artists and independent artists, non-signed artists, that is kind of slowly changing things.
How do you navigate that as someone starting out, and someone even like, you know, having your own journey through the industry? Obviously Vancouver's kind of a different, might be different to Boston or to an LA or to New York, right? But yeah, like how do you reconcile that journey for yourself, where you want to be authentic and you want to, you know, have interesting things to say and whatnot, but at the same time you still got to be commercially viable, right? Like
at least that's, you know, like that's one of my goals for sure, like to be commercially viable, right? Because I want to make a career out of it, right? Or I do have a career out of it, and I'm kind of taking it further. But yeah, I mean, I think for me particularly, music has always just been about like expressing the sum total of your experiences, expressing your emotions, telling a story, you know, telling the story of struggle. For me, coming from gospel, I knew that like whatever it was I felt, I couldn't really put a finger on it, but whatever it was I felt, I wanted to translate that into my music as much as possible, knowing that I wasn't going to be a straight up gospel artist. So over the years I've been just influenced by so many different artists and so many different genres, but the common denominator is, how did they make me feel? How did their song make me feel? And there's just so many levels to it. Like, people don't understand, like, so many artists I hear, I'm like, damn, like there's something to this person. Like I don't even know them, but it's coming from somewhere, and it's that same feeling I got from gospel music, right? It's the same feeling I get from my faith, you know what I'm saying? And so I kind of try to like lock in that feeling, regardless of like genre wise or opportunity wise, like where I'm going. Like, it has to feel real to me. Yeah, you know, I'm less concerned about like, because you never know, right? Somebody might be like, oh, like, you know, this doesn't feel real to them or whatever. Who knows? Like, I've never gotten that, but maybe that's how someone's felt. But like, I think it's besides the point, right? So like, I keep that in mind, but then also like from a business strategy, like career perspective, obviously just like understanding like how the industry works, like what genres are popular and why, and like what songwriting formats, and there's just so many like technical things. It's just like knowledge just from like being in the industry and just from learning music over the years, you just kind of like pick up on. So you're aware of those things, but you don't let those things, or at least I don't let those things drive my decisions. You know, I listen, I learn, I adapt and adjust, right? I think it's important to be versatile and adaptable in any industry, right? Of course. But especially music, where it's constantly changing. Just even think about the last like 6-7 decades of like how each decade literally can be defined by different kinds of music, right?
Yeah.
And also the industry changes too,
Yeah.
right? There was no independent artists back then. Now there's a ton of independent artists, and it has it's pros and cons.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you think that's ultimately a good thing in the long run? Or do you think that the commercial framework or the label framework will still be a solid foundation for years to come?
I don't know. I mean, I think anything can happen. But I think that nothing's going to happen overnight.
Yeah.
Most likely. But I hope that independent, like right now you see like Kanye West saying like own your music, right? Like going back to like the labels and the artists that he partially owned music on, he started giving their ownership rights back as well. Just like I think the world of indie music is gaining popularity, and like the talent pool within like the like C-list, D-list, and lower like artists is crazy. Like all my favorite artists and musicians and singers right now are not the ones that are like on the radio, and like I'm just like way more intrigued, and like I was talking about like that feeling I get in music, I get it more often from these artists. So I think a lot of artists are starting to realize their own power, and kind of just believing in themselves and building their brands on their own and using the platforms that are out there right now. So I think it's going to change. I think there needs to be a revolution in music. As I said, I don't think it's going to happen overnight, but like you're already starting to see shifts that are happening. But we also live in a capitalistic society, and the music industry is a capitalist system and institution. So everything's money driven, and
it's also merit based too. As much as it's money driven, I think when you get to the top tiers, it's incredibly money driven, obviously, and it's formulaic. But also, I still think that the cream rises to the top, right? In that kind of market based.
You mean like when you're already an A-list artist?
No, then... like as any artist, if your shit is good, it will rise. It will rise to the top.
I'd like to. I'd like to believe that, but like I think that, like proportionally so, yes, but it's it's not enough, right? Like you also need like connections, opportunities, money. Even like when you're trying to get bigger, right? Like you have to spend money on marketing yourself. You need to spend money on recording. Traveling, like whatever it is to you are your own business, right? Yeah. So you got to invest in yourself. So like those things are tricky too, depending on your situation, right. And then there's also things that are out of your control, right? Just like opportunity, time and place, COVID, right? Things that you kind of just have to go with. But yeah, like I agree. Like obviously if you're talented, there's going to be more opportunities, but it needs to be more than that. You have to be a business person, right? You have to know how to manage yourself and all these other things. So a lot of times artists find themselves in situations where they have a manager too early or someone else, and they're making decisions for them, and they don't even know what they really want. And I think it's like the word independent is independent for a reason. Like if you're an independent artist, you really have to like be the kind of person. It's tricky, honestly, because a lot of artists aren't like business people or don't know how to manage themselves or market themselves, and it's a challenge, right? So then they face certain challenges. But yeah, I think that generally a lot of talent is recognized, and nowadays because independent is
Instagram,
kind of
YouTube.
growing. Yeah, and you have social media is huge. It's easier for people with talent to be heard, but they still have to be strategic in order to make that happen. Yeah.
From a business standpoint, even just, I don't know how, religious you are, let's say spiritual you are, but when you're talking about staying like true to your roots or authentic to your sound or to what you believe in, even, is there a point where if you want to go the more commercial route, where some of those things become harder to reconcile, like staying true to your spirituality and maybe having to sing lyrics to a song that you don't agree with? Do you know, like, whether or not you would do that? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
You're really getting into the grid of it.
Let's do it, man. We're going. I've just been warming you up for the last
You're like, no, give
months.
me more. Yeah, I think that the older I get, the more important like sticking to your morals and your values and what you believe in is. You know, like you just realize that, like, or I realized that, as time goes on, if you don't do that, and then you will start to lose like a sense of like who you are and like what you stand for, what you represent. And I think that is a disadvantage to anyone in any industry.
Yeah.
That being said, I'm definitely an opportunist, So like if an opportunity presents itself, it's like I'll think of it from a business perspective. I'll think of it from like an investment perspective. I'll think about it from like a values perspective, I grew up not with many opportunities, so I think that's kind of like how I became an opportunist. So at least I hope I understand how the word works, but like just kind of to answer your question more directly, I don't think I would sell out if that's what you're asking, but like I would
mean it in those terms, but yeah.
I would compromise like certain things. It depends, right? Like it can't be something so like egregious or aggressive.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't like
rap about the devil.
Like straight up. Like I wouldn't rap about the devil. wouldn't like
are there off-limit topics for you? Like
off-limit topics?
Like I don't know your full would you discography, is that what they call it? I'm pretty familiar with it, but like I don't remember you rapping about or singing about I guess maybe I was gonna say sex, but like anything too egregious on that front or things like that, right? So I know you haven't maybe dealt to that. Are there things that you wouldn't, or that just don't jive with you?
Just I guess like anything that would go against my faith, but like other than that, I'm pretty open. I mean, like I swear in music, I talk about sex in music, not violence. Like I've actually like I write protest music as well.
Yeah.
How do you want to say on the side? Like straight up, I write protest music, and I write music specifically for the Black Lives Matter movement and to channel my own experiences. So I will not write about any kind of hate language or hate speech to any kind of group, subgroup, culture, subculture, gender identity, race, ethnicity, anything like that. So I think those are the things that are off topic. Anything that falls under the category of hate.
When you were talking earlier about like superficial music, you mentioned like what is superficial to you?
Just like in general, like
in music, in today's
music.
let's just say in today's music landscape, whether that's pop music or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I go based off of feel, So like when you've been around like music for a long time and like amazing musicians and amazing storytellers, and it just music hits different, So I think like on one end, I'm trusting like my gut, right? If something feels fake, and then it probably is, or it doesn't feel authentic, and it's probably not. Or sometimes people are just straight up like appropriating, a genre. Most genres of music are black music, so a lot of times you have like a white person that's singing R&B or rapping, and it feels very forced. They're very acrobatic about the technicalities, or very superficial about the topics, or it just doesn't feel like them. It's coming from them, right? And then you have someone like Eminem or there are artists like him that kind of like, what I'm saying? Like they reflect on their own experiences. So I think that's important.
Yeah. I remember there was something about Bruno Mars. Right, and I honestly probably even shouldn't be hosting a podcast because I'm not really like familiar with a lot of things in pop culture.
No.
But anyone
can do it.
Yeah, that's hence this. But there was something about Bruno Mars a while back, and I think there was he was getting some flack for something along those lines, for maybe appropriating R&B or I don't even really know his music. Because he's Filipino, I think, or his background's Filipino, isn't it?
I think he's from Hawaii, but like
is he?
He might be part Filipino.
Yeah.
I thought he was part black. I don't know much about him. But like maybe like I don't know if it had to do with like his race or ethnicity.
It has something that he wasn't like a black American, and so that I mean.
So maybe he's not. But
regardless, I'll just finish up because I don't want to.
Sorry, go ahead.
No. I don't want to talk out of my ass too. Like I just want to clarify that regardless of what that situation is, do you think that there's room there? Like even if it is. I think a lot of people would say they enjoy Bruno Mars, and I think he's talented or whatever it is, right? Is that appropriation, or is that appropriating in an authentic way? If as long as the content matter or the subject matter is true to them, do you know what I mean? Like the style of music versus the subject matter, I think is.
For sure, style music.
If I'm making sense.
No, I'm definitely following you. I think that I just want to firstly say that like to not culturally appropriate, you got to be appropriate, and that's something that a lot of artists playing black music don't reflect on. Like understanding like where this music came from. You know what I'm saying? Where hip hop came from, R&B came from. You keep going back, where gospel came from, spirituals came from, Afrobeat came from. Like it's all like music. It's at the end of the day, like it's rooted in protest music and music that came out of like struggle, right? In the black experience. So that being said, I feel like a lot of people will come in and be like, oh, I like that because it sounds good. So I'm gonna like take that sound and then I'm gonna do my own thing with it without acknowledging where it came from. So I think that's one thing a lot of artists can do, like whether they're like at a performance or in some way like have it their responsibility, like especially if they're playing like very black music, to be like, hey, like acknowledge and just acknowledge and be grateful of and state like this is like a black music and I'm thankful to be a part of it. And as I said, like you can feel it and hear it like from different artists, right? And like how authentic it sounds. Going back to like a Bruno Mars, like regardless of whether he's black or not, like he's dope. He's obviously like hella talented. I know like I've also heard critics of like some of his like funk, bringing the funk elements like in a pop perspective is kind of like. It's too poppy. I mean, people are always going to complain about poppiness, right? But he's amazing, right? In my opinion, and you can't deny that. But yeah, I think like I personally don't think he appropriates. Like from a talent perspective, skill perspective, writing perspective, who he is as a person, how he presents himself, and all of that. Like those are the kinds of things you want to look for, right? And especially when conversations like this come up. That'll also like reveal, who's appropriating and who's not appropriating and treating it the right way. Because there's no like rule book, right? Yeah. But like what matters is like how, like think about how the people who created the music would feel with how you are using your privilege within this genre. I think that's an important way to think about it. It's not like what's right or wrong based off of like definitions of rule book versus like how would a black person feel? How would the general population feel? And am I doing my due diligence and paying my respects and not, being a culture vulture or something to just take advantage of a system of opportunity? Because a lot of times you'll have non-black artists like rising to fame when they're playing black music.
Give me an example.
That. Ooh, I don't know if we want to do all that, but like,
we don't have to. We can go on to something. I mean, if there's a prominent example that.
No, I don't want to do that. Okay, I'm not going to call anyone out, but like, I just think that
just because,
it's just something to keep in mind. Know that, just be mindful of the decisions you're making, and I think I think a lot of like A-list white artists are starting to be more conscious about it, especially as the whole Black Lives Matter movement is proliferating around the world, especially this year. You start to see more artists speaking up, and especially a lot of these artists have mostly black bands, you know what I'm saying? And like, for a reason, right? Because they really want like an authentic representation of a certain sound. So, for example, like Justin Bieber, like I think he posted the other day, and he was saying that like he got nominated for a Grammy, but for pop. But he was saying that like his record, his most recent record, he's saying like I'm so grateful, but like that was an R&B record, and I tried really hard to be, you know, authentic and like emulate he's talking about like the instrumentation and who he had on the project and just all of the pieces, so that like, you know, that shows like that he's very conscious and aware of that he's like a guest in the genre. And the fact that he even wrote that, he's saying, oh, like, you know, like it's important to not whitewash or change what the authenticity of the music is because I'm white, you know? Like in a way, maybe the Grammys was like had like some appropriate undertones from saying, oh, like maybe because he's white, like we're putting him in pop, or maybe because he's generally known as pop, right? But like if something is something, like like pay their respects and let me know.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on then someone like Cardi B? And you know, she uses the N-word in her music and stuff like that. And I don't know, maybe she's half black. I actually don't know.
Actually, I don't know either.
I thought she was Puerto Rican.
I know she's Latina, like, right? I don't know if she's like what percentage.
Yeah. So, but does that become a gray area then? Because, right?
I think that like if you're like everyone, like first of all, I'll start with saying every black person will have a different opinion. Like there's no like hard and fast rule.
No, of course,
you know, some black people don't like to say the N-word, you know, or don't like when other black people say the N-word. But like at the end of the day, every black person can make that choice for themselves.
For sure.
But yeah, I think that in general, if you're not black or have black roots or visibly black or like that whole thing, you like don't say it in your music or in anything. And in Vancouver, I'm gonna call people out, not by name because I don't even know who they are, but I've like come across it by people sending me things. But a lot of white rap artists say the N-word in their music, like in Vancouver. Really? And it's ridiculous. Like it's so laughable because like most of these artists are trash. Honestly, in my opinion. But anyways, like that's a thing, and like it's normalized, and people probably think like, oh, in today's world, like that's probably not happening. No, that's happening all the time. And like I've seen Instagram battles about it, you know, black people going in and saying, don't do this, multiple black people, and them just backlashing, and it's crazy.
I mean, is this just kind of like the local scene you're talking about, like clubs and local venues that you've seen this happen, or just people that you follow
live? Maybe I've only seen it like once.
Really? Eh?
But
that's interesting.
Like on Instagram and social media, like people know like I'd be like social justice warrioring like too hard sometimes, but like they be sending me stuff, and I'm just like, oh Lord, here we go again.
Yeah. So what are your? I know you've used it. I like your song YBN, and when we first got in touch, and I kind of went through mainly just Blue. I'm quite familiar with your album Blue, and I was like, it's a catchy song, and I can jam out to that, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, you know what I mean?
I hope you do.
But and so in terms of that song in particular, I feel is almost, it has a comedic element to it.
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of like a rebellious tone to it. Yeah. So like I have no problem using it. Like I like in general, like, you know, for me and for a lot of black people, you know, it's you know, using it as a term of endearment, right? Flipping something negative into something positive. But in that song particularly, I'm talking about like I'm kind of rebelling against like people kind of like telling you that you're not going to become something, right? It's like, oh, you're just like a young broke nigga, like, you know, like obviously within the black community, right? Like just basically people not believing in you, right? So like it's kind of like I'm a young broke nigga, like nah, like I'm actually like making waves, which is pretty dope. So it's kind of a little play on that, but yeah, like I think that there's so many ways to express yourself even within the use of that word, and I'm always one to encourage people to take something negative and turn it positive. So
yeah, when I'm listening to YBN, and like, you know, I don't really, I'm not trying to get into this because I know that there was like, from a white perspective, when I'm listening to that, obviously I'm not going to be like riding down the street like blaring that, singing along. Mm-hmm. But like when I'm at home, like I feel like it's part of the song. Like as a white person, like, is that acceptable for me to sing along? Do you know what I mean? Like, because there's going to be non-black people that listen to this.
Honestly, at the end of the day, like, I think like even being by yourself and singing along to it, like there's just so much to unpack within that word and the history of that word, right? Like we're not going to go on a whole race history and education here, but like just like remember, that's like the best thing I can tell my friends is remember the history. Think about that every single time you know it's in a song or something. You know, a lot of my friends, like, they don't say it, you know what I'm saying, but like, of course, but maybe they're thinking it when they're like in songs on, or maybe they say it when their black friend is not around. Who knows? I don't know. But that is something I hope that every white person's thinking about.
Yeah, for sure. So I kind of want to talk to you a bit about the Vancouver music scene, because you're coming from Boston, and, you know, I think generally as a Canadian, you know, America is, well, at least bastions of America are the mecca of you know, for me, there's LA and New York of film, and obviously I think there's to strive towards those metropolises and bastions of culture and everything, right?
For sure.
So as a Canadian, there's great talent up here, but I find that at times certain aspects or certain parts of the city or certain parts of the country, while the talent is there, the general culture within the geography doesn't quite mirror the individuals, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. That's that could be a whole podcast on its own.
I know. So coming from Boston into and Vancouver is a bit of a hub. It's, you know, it's a small one nonetheless. But from Boston to Vancouver, what are your thoughts on the scene here? And is there improvements? Is it good? Is it just, you know, need time to evolve? Or
I mean, I think Vancouver's scene is like, there's a lot of talented people here for sure. I think like the culture is very new in the industry. I can't say the industry, but like the culture, like Vancouver, I wouldn't say it's like a hub for music in the world, right? I mean, I think like US in general is like a major hub. And there are other hubs around the world, but mainly the US, right? So it only makes sense that like the history, like the creation of so many genres and or extensions of genres like came out of you know, those places. So like Vancouver doesn't have that history, right? So like naturally it's gonna be like a younger scene, and maybe there's less opportunities. I think that the Canadian government in general like does a better job in terms of like supporting artists. Like there's a lot of grants and opportunities like that to kind of scale it. So I think like that kind of like maybe evens the playing field a little bit, because in the States, like, that's not a thing. Like, no one gets grants. No one, like, that's, first of all, like, there aren't even many that exist, you know? So, I know Toronto has more of a history in a hub. Like, I can't really speak on behalf of Canada as much, because I don't know the history as much, but I know that, like, most of the artists come out of Toronto. Makes sense. The biggest city, main hub. But, yeah, I think that even so, like, because of where the industry is, people that are in Canada want to eventually go to the States, you know, or want to make their way and build their career and stuff like that. But I think that because now social media, right, like we're living in a different era. Like I could be in Vancouver and still engaging with my fans and friends and other musicians and artists I know in the States, right? I'm constantly interfacing with my people in LA and New York and Boston. I actually posted a video today of like a quarantine cover, and I had 3 friends from Boston and then me and one friend from Vancouver, and that was kind of cool because like they'd never met each other, and we like collabed and like made a dope thing, you know. So like those things are possible, and like you can reach people around the world, literally. So I think that's an advantage, but there are limitations to that too, right? Because like at the end of the day, like you want to be able to tour and like visit and like go to other places to build like a more solid presence in. So yeah, I'd say overall, like obviously U.S. is like the hub for music. You also have, you know, other pockets, like you have like areas in England, UK, and Africa, and South Korea, and things like that. But yeah, I think Canada in general is not, you wouldn't think of it as like a hub, I guess. Especially not Vancouver. It's more so Toronto. So it's an interesting situation to be in as an artist here, right? Like going back to like, it's not just about talent, right? It's like what connections do you have, like how aggressive are you about opportunities, and in networking, and how business minded are you, right? Like if you can do all those things, like I think like you can definitely be successful here. But I think it's totally different from being in a New York or LA, where you could, you know, go to a jam and then you have, you know what I'm saying, industry people or artists or people that play with famous artists, and it's like easy networking, easier gig opportunities, and stuff like that. Like if you're good, obviously, but it's just a totally different like world and culture.
Do you find that? Sorry, go ahead if you were gonna finish.
No. I was just gonna like say, and it's like in LA or New York, way more diverse. Also, like musically and ethnically. And just like also the volume, right? So
do you think that like obviously live music really essentially being shut down for the most part? I mean, you had a little thing in the summer, maybe, I don't know if you have more than that. I was shooting that at the Fox, right?
Yeah, I had a few things. It was pretty dope. A ton of, like, I had a few, like, live recorded live streams, or, like, recorded in advance, I guess. Like mini concerts / live streams and some live streams. So it's pretty dope.
Do you think that with COVID and everything, that being shut down, that the foundation for music in Vancouver, that exacerbates how small it is here, or how you really need to rely on other avenues beyond a COVID year to really get your voice out there in a city like Vancouver? Or?
Yeah, I think live music is definitely like a key part of like being an artist out here, you know? And I think that's impacted a lot of artists for sure. And it also is like revealed, like, you know, who, like, I guess is built for the challenge, right? And like who can kind of compromise, or not compromise, like I guess improvise, given the circumstances. So like it sucks now, like especially for artists that are like actually making a living off of, you know, music and stuff like that. It's like a unique challenge. But I was just like, yo, I gotta do it. You know, it's like I'm my own marketer, I have to be my own IT person, all this kind of stuff.
And I think a lot of people are realizing that now, and I think hopefully that foundation is laid for the next year too, right? And we can get back to some live music and stuff. Cool, man. Like, I know you've got a few things going on, and we'll have your links to everything down below. Instagram, which that's the other thing I forgot. You're verified now. Big guy verified.
You know,
what was that?
Something light.
What was that process like? Because it's not like, I know you've got like, you know, a few thousand followers and stuff like that.
It's pretty simple. Like anyone can apply, but like not anyone's gonna get accepted. Like, of course. Barely anyone gets accepted because like the things that they look at, you can look online, just be like, how do I get verified? Like you just go to settings, you submit. But what they're looking at is like how much press do you have? Like what have you done? Like tours you've been on,
right?
How many articles, like not just how many, like what kind of articles, like where were you featured?
Right.
They're kind of just like looking at your history and your credentials. It's like, are you a public figure? Are you an artist on the rise? Like, does it make sense for you to be verified? Period. Right? It's like I've done so much. Like I've only been in Vancouver 2 years, you know, and a lot of people only know what I've done here.
Right.
You know, I've done so much in the last like 11 years. So It's kind of like a long time coming, and it's also dope.
Yeah.
So it's pretty simple.
Yeah.
Just like for people who want to get verified, it's like, yo, just like focus on your craft and in creating, but like also being like, you know, that involves driving engagement on your platform, right, with your craft, like, and focus on just be artistry focused at the end of the day,
not verification focused,
because the rest, like, all of that will come. It's dope, you know what I'm saying, all that stuff's dope, but like, you know what I'm saying, like, it would be the worst to, like, for example, be verified or get any kind of acknowledgement for something that you actually didn't do, right? That would just be weird. But also, like, at the end of the day, it won't help you if it's not built on a foundation.
Totally. You
know what I'm saying? Like, it should actually reflect a trajectory, right?
Yeah, no doubt. Like I said, I'll have everything down below linked. I mean, maybe the short doc will be out by the time this is released.
Yo, got so many things in the works. Yeah, in the meantime, I think all the information will be down here.
For sure.
Holla at me on Instagram at Makadi Official. Same thing on Twitter. Same thing on Facebook.com/Makadi Official. Same thing with YouTube. Stay tuned. 2020 was going to be big. You know, 2020 was like... it was a testing year, right? It's like, do people really got what it takes, like, for this artistry thing and independent artistry thing and essentially entrepreneurship thing?
Yeah,
so I'm excited for 2021. Hopefully things open back up. I'm excited to go back on tour. I'm excited to slay. You know, I'm excited to serenade. all of that.
Awesome. Love it. Thanks, Mac. I appreciate you doing this again.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, cheers.